telephone rang one evening. My buddy called for me. Said the bankers all are leaving. You better come round and see.
Antino's onto the scene, and Chin let him go at the top of the straight. Antino dashed to the lead from Faulkner Park. Buckaroo, Kovalika's running on. Then Miss Jolene, but it's Antino in front. 200 metres left to run. He's been left in front a long way up from home, but he's clear. Kovalika, Faulkner Park try ever so hard, but Antino, what a dashing ride.
Well, the bankers called a meeting to the White House. They went one day. They was going to call on the president in a quiet and a sociable way.
Beeman's in one race, the others are in another. 100 metres left to run. This is an absolute annihilation. Beeman has won by 10 lengths.
No banker could I find. They were all down at the White House. No banker was left behind.
Giga Kick still second last here, peeling right to the outside in the Goodwood. So Climbing Star the leader here. Press Down's after it. Sursway down the middle. Then Watch Me Win. Stretton Angels getting right up on the inside here. So it's in front. Climbing Star. Sursway. Where's Giga Kick? He's not there yet. Reserve Bank's on the scene. Reserve Bank goes to Sursway. Giga Kick flying home, but Reserve Bank's going to win the.
Now on PG Podcast Network, it's time for the year-round carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Ralphie.
G'day, thanks for tuning in to Year-Round Carnival on a Tuesday. Give Vince time to clock everything from everywhere. Of course, there you heard a little bit of Raikkoda's work with Reserve Bank winning the Goodwood Handicap, and we had to mention the two very impressive winners from the Gold Coast, Antino, who's already an established Group 1 star, and Beedman. What was that? Gee, if you're going to name a horse after a champion jockey, but you want to see it perform, and did it ever, so it'll be very interesting to see what it says on the clock. Of course, that audio courtesy of Sky Racing and Racing.com, respectively. Vince Accardi from Daily Sexuals. Good morning, mate.
Top of the morning to you, Ralphie.
Oh, well, we're going a bit of everywhere here, but we'll start with South Australia where the Group 1 race was. Jamie Mellum nailed the brief there on Reserve Bank. The Price Kent team nailed the brief on Reserve Bank, just getting him to peak. We're here to talk clinically about the numbers, and it'd be fair to say the overall performance was well done the winners, but we're not getting too excited Everest-wise, are we?
No, but I mean, yes, that's correct. Bottom line, if we're looking at strictly purely on the numbers, Reserve Bank plus 1.3. Sort of backed up by the horses come second, Ralphie, Benchmark. Giga Kick, sort of borderline Benchmark. So just look at that little quartet or that little trio. That sort of really sums it up. And then to frank it even further, the Raws were 1.5, so you can see the variations nil. Now, well, I must add, the tempo of the race, while it was like 1.8 below benchmark for the leader, Reserve Bank come from a mile back, minus 8.7, Giga Kick 8.3 below. So there is some room there to indicate that there could still be more than what we've seen. But realistically, this is what's, I don't know, maybe I'm a dreamer, but it's come off from what it used to be.
Yeah, for sure. I love looking at the jockey comments straight after a race because the adrenaline's still running and they're very raw. Tom Stockdale on Climbing Star said, look, I just didn't want to be there, but it's not a horse you can restrain. So there I am in front. So that pretty much underlines your point there that they've walked. The horse, The leader didn't want to be there, but he had no choice. And it's unfair, I guess, in a way of saying 1.3 with Reserve Bank when you're going so slowly, but very solid mid-race, very solid sustained speed, best last 800, 600, 400, 200 a day. But I would say for the Giga Kick followers, and you know, it was such a puzzle on the Friday when we had this discussion, the puzzle for the Giga Kick followers were it's so hard to do a big mid-race over 1,200 first up, and that was a new frontier for him because previously first up he'd beat 1,000 and wasn't set first up previously.
Yeah, and this has failed a few trainers in recent times, Ralphie, just with an adjustment to the strategy. In terms of like where the horse travelled through that first section, couldn't get much cruisier. I would say it's genuinely like for this horse's profile, when you look at it, it's just set up trial-wise, it's probably a couple lengths faster than its typical trial through that first split time. So did get it very cruisy and got the opportunity to be really hard late. The interesting factor for me was the mid-race move obviously had an impact on a group of horses. Now, Giga Kick, you could see it peaked between the 4 and the 2, Ralphie. That was when it got to its maximum speed, and it hit at 3.2 lengths above, and then we've seen a slight deterioration. Not much, about 0.4, sort of indicates that the horse was obviously very fit, but was missing that race conditioning.
There's only so much you can do fitness-wise, yeah? Is that
Absolutely, yep.
And this is where, again, I'm sort of half channeling Mark Lambourne from the old punter show here in looking at the SPs, because this backs up what you're saying, and I'm just saying more as an education tool for people listening, particularly those trying to learn the craft. Reserve Bank, $5.50, well backed, and a good performer. Giga Kick, an established star, $2.10. Sir Sway, $61. Well, how did it split those two? Race shape.
Yeah. And we've got to probably put this little overlay on Reserve Bank. If we look at taking it, I'm assuming that's this last run for the campaign, the progression the horse has made over the 2 preparations has been almost 6 lengths. So they've definitely done great things with the horse, Ralphie. Now, moving into its next campaign, it wouldn't be foolish to think that there's got to be maybe another couple of links of improvement, naturally.
It almost says to you that if they, don't dream with the Everest and go to the Melbourne sprint races, he's probably got a Group 1 on him down here when the absolute cream is in Sydney. Yeah,
true, Ralphie, but the prize money, it's like the biggest magnet on earth for racing sprints, isn't it? Everyone's just attracted to it.
I was going to say there's one bigger magnet, but we won't go.
Okay.
I want to ask you about, just while we're on South Australia, the one horse that talking about a progression is Regal Asmon, and I thought, how did you manage to just completely swap this field? Because I thought, the likes of non-conformists were going to come into play, but oh wow, was this a sprint race or this is in race 6? I'm talking the mile. Was this a sprint race or a 1,600 metre race? How fast were they going?
Race 6. Yep.
Yeah.
Right, where were we? Sorry, Ralphie.
So Regal Asmon's won on the backup against probably similar horses. He beat Aaron Bay previous start.
Yeah, so here we go, Ralphie. 5.7 lengths above the benchmark through that first half of the race. That's really moving, and you could see the deterioration for that lead group had already come into play big time, but that makes it tough for a few horses to be able to climb over the top of them. And Regal Asmon, right on the cusp, Ralphie, 5.9 lengths off the leader. Like, it's just borderline where you want to be, but inside that zone. And you could see that switch in the energy distribution while everybody else is really and truly deteriorating because of that pace. This horse has been able to increase its speed all the way through. Over the last 400, it ratcheted up like another 1.3 lengths quicker. This is Regal Amazon going 3.2 above. And, here we are with a final score 0.7 above, second best. I actually felt that was one of the top runs of the day.
Yeah, it was super. So with non-conformist, I was hoping it would be placed. It just missed. But and the market support was there. It trialled really well leading into it, but they were thinking of going to Queensland. I would say they probably weren't expecting a race shape like this. And that late taper says, he's an old boy, but he's probably still got more to come.
Oh, you summed it up beautifully, Ralphie. 1.2 length taper over the last 200 metres. And really, the horse was already all out by the time it hit the 400 metre mark, and it held on until the 2, and then it just dropped off. So you can be really confident just off that sort of first up run that minimum you're going to pencil in is a 1 length improvement purely on conditioning. And the way I'm looking at it, he's trending right up to at least a 1.5 profile. So if he's going to Queensland with more distance, it's going to be excellent.
All right, let's have a look at the Gold Coast meeting. Firstly, as an overview, what's your thoughts on how the Gold Coast track was able to play? The last race obviously abandoned.
Yeah, wow, it's crazy. Let's. When I say crazy, here it is, Ralphie. Race 1 we're 2 lengths below the standard for 2,200 metre race, and you'd be sort of taking a position, geez, that track's not too bad, or these horses good. The reality is that I felt that the winner was good. Race 2, 1,200 metre race, minus 8.1. Race 3, 1,400, we're minus 2.4. And very similar in race 4, Beedman's race was minus 3.8 in the Raw. To me, that was the first sign the track's come off a couple of lengths. So we'd sort of pretty much gotten through the first 4 races before we started seeing the deterioration. Now, race 6, 4.4 below, is, in my view, in line with the Beedman run. The enigma for me was that race number 7. That's minus 1.2, and the reason why that's the case, the pace was horrendous. Lead speed, 11.3. You might as well have been going about plus 14, 15, Ralphie. Hence the reason why you got a 1.2 below benchmark. And then, there you are, you got to race 8, which is another 1,800 metre race. And mind you, the lead speed was plus 2, ended up with a minus 19. So the track completely fell apart between the 4 and the finish line, like completely fell apart. Now, what was also evident, Ralphie, the 500, I was going to say 600, but somewhere between the 600 and the 450 mark was the beginning of the deterioration to the track all day. Like, to break benchmark outside of race 1 was almost impossible. And hence the reason why I felt this track fell apart. Around the back, it obviously was better, especially if you can put in that sort of speed. I mean, I know some horses got the capability of running fast, but the reality is that track was clearly superior around the back and was the opposite, worst case scenario from the 400 home. But I reckon it's more like the 500.
So I'll ask you about Beedman. We've got a bit of a match up there with Bezusto in the next race, at least. Now they were both big margin wins, so I dare say there was some horses just completely not handling it, but it just looked amazing, Vince. So what's the clock said about race 5 when it's won by 8.3 lengths?
Well, it's come in with an overall score of minus 1.7, Ralphie. 6th best of the day, and well, if we're talking about are you inside top 10? Yeah. Well, that's fantastic news, right? That you're inside the top 10. Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic news. But the reality is there's probably a lot of truism to the performance as well, because the subsequent race, which was virtually, when you look at the final times, they were virtually identical, right? But a fair bit off race 4. So I'm not going to glean too much. I know it's a 2-year-old and it wins by 8.3. But the reality is, aren't you almost 3?
So it's just a case of probably, would this be a fair way of saying it? Let's see it again.
Well, we have to. And if you want to be really hard scorer to say, I want the maximum figure right now, all you could do is you could add the maximum over the last 200 metres because the horse was coasting, right? And that's like from a minus 1.3 to a minus 3. Even if you said, the horse has had it 1 from the 400, there's no way you're going to be adding more than 2 lengths. And that gets your benchmark, right? Slightly above. And if you were ridiculous and said, I want to go all the way back to the 400 and you add 3 lengths, you're 1.3 and you're in line, no better or worse than our current crop of 2-year-olds. So this is a late showing horse. And it stood up to pretty much what's going around at the moment across particularly Melbourne and New South Wales for 2-year-old profiling. It's not any better though, but it's not to say this horse can't become a brand new, sprinting sensation in the future. But right now, the 8 lengths is 100% massive illusion because the rest they were horrible.
So let's get to the Hollandale. It's just amazing that this is why I love looking at your numbers, Vince, because when a jockey goes for home at the 400 metre mark, like Flakeshire did on Antino, and not dissimilar to what he did when he won the Toorak in that amazing ride, you think what gives him such confidence to be able to do that? But then the numbers come through, and as you said, an insane speed. So what Chinny's done is, I'm not going to slow. I'm just going to let the horse flow. Now, the horse is good enough to flow, But that is why an elite rider, we see it with J-Mac, we see it with all the best. They just ride to the numbers. They're not trying to, but their efficiency is just phenomenal.
And this is so important, Ralphie. I felt the first, there might have been a couple of stages of this horse. Number one, how wet was the track really? I felt the track was most affected from the turn home. The tempo that they set was, in my view, right on the border of its outline figure in terms of how fast can you really go without being completely out of petrol and be a performer over the last 400 metres. Well, there it is. It's +3. The horse is 8.5 lengths virtually from the leader, but the real leader, Ralphie, and this is now coming back to the brilliance of the ride, was, I'd say, Boris the Argent was the genuine leader of the race, going +8, because just folk, it's just pure stupidity about that pace. 11.3. You didn't have to have that breakaway. Maybe that was the strategy. Maybe they just thought, let's go really fast and try and break everybody down. And this is what I see so often in 1,800-metre races. They attempt to run it like a mile. And if you're overextending through that first half of the race, it's going to be more like 2,400. So Antino, in my view, was sensationally positioned, and his maximum line of early speed, like if he had gone, let's say, the same speed as Faulkner Park, it probably would have been a completely different result. But because he didn't, he held his nerve and said, no, I'm going to stick to this pace because this is about as fast as I can get the horse to go without breaking rhythm, allowed this runner to have the best move between the 8 and the 4 in terms of how far above benchmark. Well, this was 0.2 below, the rest were miles below that, and -4 last 400. And again, when you line that up, I mean, just on the, forget about the last 5 horses, Ralphie, right? But if I just go on the first 8 across the line, the average speed over the last 400 was about -8.8. And this horse was twice as good as that. And the next closest runner was the runner who ran third, that Calvecchia, who appreciates wet ground, and they had a -5.2.
Yeah.
Run was big.
He's a good horse, Antino. And you tick to the trainer too, because often when they have that overseas run, we don't see him again, as in we don't see him at their best again.
Well, this is the thing with this horse going into that race. Number one, too wet was going to be one sort of a question mark. And what I mean by too wet was if you're going to end up on a heavy 10, right? Heavy 8. Number two was, are you really going to come back? But here was the challenge. And I don't know, we might have touched on this, Ralphie, a week or so ago. A number of horses who have been in Queensland with such damp tracks, it was difficult for a lot of horses to have the right training in preparation. So there was always that chance that Randwick run first up for Antino was in desperate need of fitness.
Yes.
Got the run in on decent ground and has come here, and we've just seen this explosion to the next level, and we are nowhere near where this horse is headed for this campaign. I mean, what's their ultimate target?
I would assume a Doomben Cup.
Right.
2000 will be the next run from here. So, yeah,
right. Okay.
I would assume that's next. Let's have, well, because you've opened the door about this point about Queensland trained horses that and we often see it carnival to carnival. If Sydney has a very wet winter, that Melbourne horses can go up north and vice versa. Well, War Machine's won at Caulfield. Firstly, Caulfield, of course. Can I just ask you something here, Vince? I reckon Caulfield's been fantastic for the last 3 months now, since that All Stakes debacle. And there it was on Saturday. The track was upgraded during the day. I don't think Caulfield's played better, has it?
Ralphie, when you become geniuses of management of hoses, you just get too good.
You're leaving them in the shed?
Yeah. You just allow the track to be the track. And sure, you put your little sprinkle of water in without saying, well, see, this is the part. If the rules are, we need you to be racing during the course of the day at G4, there's this temptation, if the weather's fine and mild and good, that you want to have the track probably starting S5 or worse, and then you may not ever get any drying. And to depending on the wear and tear of the track, it just falls apart. I love it when we don't see that. I love it.
Yep.
And you can see the performance, War Machine, Ralphie. 0.5 above. On the Raws, it's 2.3, just clearly stamping that we're right in the middle of G4, G3.
So let me ask you about War Machine in depth, because this is his first start for Team Hayes. Of course, previously trained by the late Mike Moroney and RIP there, of course. A lot of their horses have gone across to Team Hayes. The Hayes boys love scratching horses in the off season from wide barriers. This horse drew wide, and they weren't at all concerned. They weren't at all concerned that this horse drew wide. It got a fast tempo race, and they wanted to see what was under the bonnet for a possible Queensland campaign. So what did he do?
Right, okay. Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I get that now. Well, first of all, when we look at the breakdown of the race, in terms of the scorecard, it was virtually identical to the Mornington run, because Mornington first up, 0.6 above Ralphie. Here, 0.5 above. Okay, the slight caveat is Mornington ranked 4, here ranked 1. We didn't see like this, unbelievable finish, just the way the track was set up. But here we are, the horse is travelling virtually benchmark. So it is quicker tempo than what it was running at Mornington through the first split time. Between the 8 and the 4, the horse has gone 3.9 above. Interesting, the last 200 metres, Ralphie.
Yep.
Massive drop-off. And that signal has to be that there's a lot more coming. More coming. Yeah. Well beyond the 1.1. Yes. Even if I halved it, we're bang on +2.
Yeah, I think they're going to have some fun with it up north.
Yep.
You look at when he was a younger horse in the autumn of last year, he bolted in the Bendigo Guineas, and you thought he's a horse. Probably didn't really come up last prep. Well, this prep he's come in, and as I said, there was just an avalanche for him pre-race, and there was good fast tempo. So it looks like it's going to be a strong form race going forward as well. And well, like I said, we're going around the world today. Let's have a look at Gosford, the Gosford Cup. Right, the two I want to ask you about, races 7 and 8. Contrasting tempos, of course. Levon Pierre on our Sizzlers. This is from the 26th of April. We sizzled him 2 starts back, Rose Hill, win a career PB of 1.9 over 1400 very firm ground. So he produced an excellent effort, stepping to 1800. Conversely, getting bog heavy conditions, minus 2.9 at the 800, sitting second before minus 4.7 mid race, minus 4.9 last 400. So maintaining it under full pressure, underlining his tenacity, has tactical speed typical of stable. But now in his first prep as a gelding, is controlling his tempo much better. This is the part I want to ask you about, Vince. And that says he will remain very hard to beat going forward, possibly a Brisbane campaign. Well, I don't know if he's still going to Brisbane, but he won the Gosford Cup. He's eligible for the big dance. And that ability to relax now he's a gelding paid off, even though he was in front, because, Vince, they weren't going overly fast, were they?
Ralphie, 17 lengths below benchmark. He pulled their pants down, the rider.
100%.
You see, he absolutely outmaneuvered. He said, listen, guys, imagine if there's hurdles every 300 metres. You need to be crawling, guys. And that's what happened. And it was proven by the last 400. I mean, look at how blistering the last 400 metres was, plus 7.6. I mean, the second horse has gone almost plus 10, Ralphie. Just franking how quick they went late because of this was a 500 metre race.
So under that circumstance, and I know it's easy to pick the flash home runner, but that's a genuine sprint from Antino Rosso. Brisbane Cup 2400, that sort of looks like an ideal type of race for him. Look at his profile. I mean, he won the Newcastle Cup last year over 2300 last spring, and he's one of those evolving Chris Waller type stayers, I reckon.
Well, being a Waller trained horse, there's no way he's come to the end of his prep. And really, a lot of these horses, when you get these big booming finishes, they actually savour half a run. Therefore, that if you're sort of borderline peaking, you've got that chance to get one more big run if you're sort of coming towards your top, and then this is it, and then you're either going to deteriorate or hold. This is the case definitely for Antino Rosso. Number one, I'm surprised that horse had that sort of sprint in it, but just goes to show, if you can get the right race shape, and you're on the right part of the track, and you've got clean surface over the last few hundred metres, you've got a chance to really put in a big sprint. And this was, for me, like massive sprint for the horse, and showed that it's got some talent.
Don't you wish know thyself? This is a big tick for the stable, I reckon, because I'm just looking at what we wrote on on the 5th of April, which is obviously a big Group 1 day. 0.8 lengths above benchmark, ranked 23rd on the day at Randwick. Job done, winning the big dollar provincial championship, but also in a solidly run 1400 on clean ground, gave us a chance to see what he could do. So 0.8 lengths above benchmark that day, and as I said, that was I think it was 4 Group 1s. It might have been Doncaster Day. They're obviously not as strong a day on Saturday, but from 0.8 that day, what did he do on Saturday?
Well, he ended up hitting exactly 0.8, Ralphie, and it was the best of the day. So, and mind you, I was going to say not really a big surprise, because realistically, this horse was always going to be hard to beat in this race. But I felt that the race was run with good merit. Lead speed was 1.6 lengths below benchmark. I always feel that if you're somewhere near benchmark through that first split time, and that's the speed, it's always a good guide to the strength of the race. Neither ourselves going 3.4 lengths below benchmark in an excellent position. Probably the big plus was no serious move by that lead group through the mid-race. They were just able to make marginal increases but not break benchmark, and the horses that were too far back, they had to pay the price and have big extensions in the middle, and that puts you in a bad position over the last 400 metres. I did see the little bit of a taper at the end, sort of giving the signal that's it. So I don't know whether we're going to get any better than that this campaign, or whether that's the end of the campaign anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. And let's, because you're having 3 weeks off, Vince, let's leave.
Hey, I'm having 3 weeks. That's it.
Let's leave our listeners with a little Christmas, little Queensland present for Mayor of Mount Buller, because if this isn't going to Queensland and winning races, I'll go he. But what's your interpretation of this type of run for her to be able to peak from here?
What race is that, Ralphie?
In that same race, the third.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I always try to watch what Chris Waller's doing, playing chess when the rest of us are playing checkers, right?
Yeah. Well, the first starting point's got to be, as you would always put up at the Crown, Ralphie, there's the horse going 11.2 lengths below benchmark. That is his classic style.
Yes.
Out the back, doing nothing, come with the big surge in the middle, 13.9 length mid-race squeeze. Hard to detect that, right? Hard to detect it. And then plus 2.1 last 400 metres. And I guess if you're looking for where's the biggest upside for the horse, we got a 2.4 length deterioration over the last 200 metres because the massive surge in the middle, that just takes you to your top.
Beauty. So ran 5th in the Group 1 there last year, and I'm not saying to win the Doomben Cup, but I think it'll be winning a race up there. Now, if you're a member, we've got a little bit of homework to do, which is from last week. Pride of Jenny at Caulfield, Feminilli winning the South Australian Derby, and lo and behold, Vince has put the clock on Car Ying Rising. So that'll be the members bonus this week, and I will be continuing through the next 3 weeks doing little pods for our members. So if you want to become a member, via my website, racetrackralphie.com.au, you can get all of Vince Accardi's work, of course, via dailysectionals.com.au. Thanks so much for listening to Year Round Carnival.